Welcome to the Inclusive Heroes Podcast with your host, Miguel Joey Aviles. Buckle up as we highlight and celebrate leaders who make inclusion happen in their world of work. If you're an HR leader, a DEI practitioner, an ERG champion, recruiter, or ally, this podcast shares the stories of how leaders raise awareness, cultivate courage, and achieve organizational transformation. Join us as we go behind the scenes of true inclusion and belonging. This is the Inclusive Heroes Podcast.
Hello, everybody. My name is Miguel Joey Aviles, your host of the Inclusive Heroes Podcast. Thank you so much for being here with us in another episode. Today, I am super excited of introducing the topic authentic relationships, the new currency. And today, I have a guest, Miss Adriana Dawson from Verizon. She is the Director of Community Engagement at Verizon, and I cannot wait for our conversation today. Adriana, how are you doing?
I am doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to dive into our conversation.
Adriana, we have been connected on LinkedIn for a while, and I have seen you flourish and continue adding value to the community. I would love for you to share with our listeners today your diversity story. Tell us where you come from, what you do. What is Adriana's multicultural diversity story?
Okay, let's get right into it, folks. So who's Adriana? All right, so I am the daughter of a family that comes from Medellin, Colombia. Spanish was my first language. My parents arrived in the U.S. in the early 70s. I was born here. But what that journey meant for me in my formative development and my formative years that innately kind of makes me who I am today is the fact that I was activated as a navigator, not only for my family, but for the growing Latino community in my state of Rhode Island. And so at a very tender age, I was assisting adults and families reviewing mail that they would get because they were unable to speak English. And so at a tender age, I was interpreting, very sensitive information, or I would join them for medical visits or attorney visits to assist them with their immigration status. You name it. Some of us, younger generation and younger folks, were deployed as navigators in assisting members of our community. And so that for me was such a formative experience in the importance of giving voice and lifting community and helping individuals connect with resources and access sort of critical basic needs that simply because they were new arrivals or they had limited or no English speaking capabilities, that they were kept out of this ecosystem of support. And so as I carried that through in my teenage years, and when I decided to step into a career, it was just woven into my DNA, figuring out how I would be able to weave this personal passion and this sort of formative experience into my professional career. And thankfully, I think I've been able to do that quite successfully over the course of my 20 plus year career. But that diversity, that lens, that level of humanity and connectivity and authenticity is something that I have lived with and by for as long as I can remember.
And Adriana, I absolutely love the concept of being a navigator for your parents, for your family, but also for your community. And often those of us in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, in the communication space, in the business development space, we navigate. We help others navigate the complexities and nuances of doing business or embracing new relationships or advancing diversity and inclusion in the workplace as well as in the community. I find it fascinating, Adriana, that concept of being a navigator also translates into your current role at Verizon. So can you tell us more about what you do there? I heard this is a new role, so tell us more.
Absolutely. So it's a fairly new role. As you mentioned in the intro, I am the director of community engagement. And what that means is I oversee a very diverse and dynamic portfolio. I oversee the Verizon Foundation. So making decisions about strategic investments that impacts society. And those are guided by the 3 pillars for our citizen Verizon, which is digital inclusion and digital equity, environmental protection, and human prosperity. So I have the privilege to wear that lens and wrap my arms around my market and determine which programs and organizations and initiatives align with those pillars and make strategic investments in those programs that are engaging and supporting individuals within those areas. And in that role, what's really cool in the last year or two that's been evolving, I've had the ability to collaborate across the enterprise, right? And so working across verticals to weave the social impact and the corporate citizenship lens into other areas of the business to help them better understand as they're engaging in flavorful communities. They're stepping into new spaces that perhaps historically our sales teams and other teams have not been in, and helping weave in a level of cultural fluency and an additional perspective that perhaps they wouldn't have had. So I'm in a really cool job. I love what I do. And it's really the culmination of my career portfolio that I have built over the course of 20 years in being a multi-sector professional and having the ability to see the whole, right? And see the complexities and connect the dots, but with a very human-centric lens applied to those business strategies.
Human-centered lens. That's powerful, particularly as organizations are facing a level of disruption never seen before. Due to COVID-19, due to Great Resignation, but also due to how diverse our communities are becoming. So often organizations are entering into spaces that they have never been before. And that's what I said at the beginning. Relationships, authentic relationships are the new currency. And I believe you cannot fake a true, authentic relationship. So, Adriana, let's go deeper on this topic about how do we develop authentic relationships? How can we go for true relationships with our community that is not performative, that is not because we want to achieve something or because we want to show a specific public affairs stance on an issue? How do we achieve through allyship, through authentic relationships?
Absolutely. And thank you for that question. So I think there is a dynamic taking place right now. So on the one hand, you have community, and this community, in the broader sense, has historically been stripped mined of their ideas, of their thoughts, where in the past, entities have stepped in to gather critical information and intel for consumer purposes, and then stepped away and sort of left the community in a quandary to say, well, we thought you were partnering with us. You know, we thought that you were going to be a part of this effort. So on the one hand, we have community members who have the ability now to detect what is not authentic, and they can sniff BS, if we're going to be very honest. They're very protective of their social and cultural assets because they've been burnt one too many times before. And so I'll leave that there. Well, on the other hand, I think for the private sector and other partners that are looking to build that authentic relationship, they recognize that there's a heightened sensitivity going on the other end. And it's no longer the window dressing or the performative, performances. And so it's the ability to honor communities, honor existing narratives, and making sure that there's a mindfulness and educating themselves about the history of those communities they're stepping into. So as they're attempting to engage in relationship building, they've taken the time to do their homework on the back end and really understand. So when they are engaging in those initial conversations, it's very validating, and it's very encouraging to the community partners to witness that these individuals took the time to understand the evolution of our population, of our demographics, of our economic, engagement and status. And so I think it's evolving on both ends. You have a community that is now much more astute, that has been through so much that they are in a position to create guardrails for themselves because they have to. And so they're being very mindful of who they let into those conversations. While again, at the same time, I think it's signaling, to partners that are attempting to build relationships with the community, we have one chance to get this right, and we need to do it right and step into it in a way that honors the existing ecosystem and efforts that have been taking place at the grassroots level.
Yeah, when I think about relationships, Adriana, I see it as a two-way street. There is the component from the community standpoint and the component from the organization. When I think about the community, the challenge when building authentic relationships, I have also seen is this posture of wearing a mask, or what experts call covering. It's like, I am going to cover my true self to either make you feel comfortable or to either protect myself, to protect my community. So when we look at our communities and these efforts, keeping that in mind, that the other part may be covering, the other part may be not feel psychologically safe, then you said something powerful, which is doing our homework, is finding out about the community, connecting with the community beforehand. So in your experience, Adriana, and you develop these kind of partnerships. So one thing is, hey, become culturally intelligent, do your homework. What else have you seen work when building true, authentic relationships?
We have to become better active listeners. We have to stop talking and we have to listen, right? It's critical that we stop applying our particular lived lens and lived experience into these spaces, right? And as we're stepping into them in a very authentic way, creating space and an opportunity to give voice, right, to what's happened. And so sitting back and asking important questions, tell me about success or challenges you've had, what's worked, what hasn't worked, how can I be a better partner, how can we collaborate, how can we co-design, what do you need? So I think the art of being a very active listener and keeping an open mind is critical in building that initial relationship on the front end. It speaks volumes, and it goes a really, really long way with our community partners because they've often not been given a voice. There have been historically, as we all know, many, many instances where they've been told what their community needs. They've been told what members or particular groups need. And so The idea of white knight on a horse saving people is no longer a thing. And we just need to hit the pause button and allow ourselves to take in the realness of what's happening in community and absorb and listen and partner.
The realness is part of the nuances of this work. And, everything that you mentioned, active listening, doing your homework, and asking questions, and then listen to those excluded perspectives, and then believe them. When you listen to them, believe their story and their perspectives. All of that is part of cultural intelligence. And we both know that that's key for building relationships. So in our work, we have to help people become more culturally intelligent. And Adriana, I don't know about you, but I believe that anyone can become culturally intelligent if they work intentionally towards it. So that said, how can we in our positions, or those of our listeners that are in diversity and inclusion practitioners, HR managers, workforce community developers, or even CEOs, how can they become more culturally intelligent?
That's another great question. You keep hitting me with all these great questions. And I do believe that cultural intelligence and cultural fluency, is a competency that can be acquired and that can be built. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, right? So what good is it for? And so for us in this space, the practitioners that are engaging, and it's part of our DNA, right? It's sort of woven into the fabric of our work. It's making sure that we create safe spaces so that our colleagues can ask us questions, right? I think that's so important. And because of everything that's happened in society very recently and in prior years, I think there's a willingness and a receptiveness to continue to build space, build community where we can exchange information, we can ask and have difficult conversations in a no judgment zone, right? To make sure that folks are equipped with a framework and a lens that can help them guide through the work. And so I don't know that we'll ever be totally culturally intelligent or fluent. It's an iterative process, because as we continue to meet more folks, continue to navigate and engage with society, we're constantly going to be learning about new cultures, new things, different nuances. So it's never sort of a one and done, and you take a course or you have an hour conversation over lunch with a colleague and Eureka, yes. I've got it. It's the recognition that it is a commitment. It's a commitment to yourself, to your work, to humanity, to absorb and learn and listen. And for those of us that are in that space more so than others, it's creating the outlets in the pathways so that the folks who are willing to learn see us as learning pillars and people that they can go to.
Adriana, I see it as dancing salsa. You hear the music and you let your body, your experiences lead the way. And as you are engaging in that dance, what to do next. What kind of behaviors, what kind of move to take there. But in order to follow the rhythm, in order to follow the music, you need to get to the dance floor. And sometimes we are afraid of taking that courageous step to get in the middle of the action. And that's what I hear you saying, cultural intelligence, you have to get out there and listen. Yes, we're going to make mistakes. Yes, we're going to stumble. Yes, we may lose the rhythm for a few microseconds, or sometimes we just lose it, period. But then you recover. You learn. And that's the muscle, like you were saying, that we have to constantly work on. I will say this, in my work with clients across the industries and internationally, I will say that cultural intelligence is one of the most important leadership competencies to make it, particularly now in 2022, 2023, and beyond. One strategy that I have seen work in many organizations is employee resource group or business resource groups. And you are involved in Somos. Can you tell us more about Somos? And then I would love to deep dive a little bit on ERGs.
Absolutely. So Somos gives voice to the almost 4,000 Hispanic and Latinx identifying employees at Verizon. And so it is a community and a group that comes together to ensure professional development, to ensure collaboration, to give voice to all the amazing levels of engagement that are taking place, whether it's volunteerism, talking about career advancement. So it's an opportunity for those of us that are Hispanic and Latinx identifying within this global amazing company to come together and to share experiences and to lift one another, as we're all on this journey at Verizon.
Lifting one another. When I think in my career, ERGs help me get ahead in my career, in my life, in my own talents and competencies. So I absolutely love that you're involved in this. I can believe 4,000 strong globally. That is an amazing number. So can we unpack the importance of ERGs, particularly in the telecommunications mass media industry, which you are part of?
Absolutely. So let's get real not that we haven't been real, but let's do that deep dive with another level of realness, right? So it's no secret that, in the innovation, technology, telecommunications space, that we'd love to see more Black and Brown representation, right? It's an industry where it's important to ensure that we're pulling in and harnessing new talent that is reflective, right, of the shifting demographics. So with that, because this industry hasn't historically been known for being extremely diverse, it's new to many of us, including myself. When I was first approached to step into the space, I was like, wait, what? Me? In this industry? You got to be kidding me. It was this idea that I either had to be a network engineer or be super techie in order to even consider this space as a career option for me. So what the ERG community does, it creates onboarding experiences for those that are joining the company in this sector for the first time. It allows us to create and cultivate relationships so that there are support networks and safety nets for folks that are learning how to navigate careers for the first time. And within the Somos community, you have both new professionals and you have very seasoned professionals. So you have the ability to create these intentional collisions within the business that creates mentorship, that creates sponsorship, again, that gives voice to the nuances of our lived experience as employees and employees of color, and in particularly Latinx and Latino. And so culturally, many of us may not have seen ourselves in this corporate or private sector space. So we're needing to ask questions. What do we do? How do we navigate? How do we prepare for this big presentation? And all of the above, everything that sort of comes under that. So again, it's the idea that it's a safety net for all employees to share experiences, to lift one another, and to offer professional development opportunities and conversations, and also in celebration of the richness that we bring to this industry, right? The flavor that we add to Verizon and how we activate in a way to continue to support the business.
I love that. You cover almost the whole talent management cycle from recruiting recruitment to retention, engagement, development, promotions, like how do we deal with X, Y, and Z? And it's that community that seeks to create experiences that help people stay in our organizations. You know, many of my clients are experiencing the great resignation. And it's almost like this revolving door, Adriana, where they recruit diverse talent, women, Blacks, Latinx, and Asians and others, but then they leave because they don't have the appropriate culture to ask them to stay. So it reminds me of your comment at the beginning about being a navigator. So ERGs are kind of that navigator within the organization to help our talent navigate life in that particular organization. So
oh, absolutely.
So, you know, Adriana, when we think about, you know, ERGs, when we think about authentic relationships, cultural intelligence, all I can think about is the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly when it comes to the communications industry. So let's just say that you have the power to see the future, Adriana. Can you let our listeners see what you see?
Absolutely. Well, in my very humble opinion, right, whether it's this industry or across the board, the diversity, equity, and inclusion is a business imperative. It is going to be woven into the fabric of day-to-day business practices, where it's no longer sort of a standalone function, but it permeates across the enterprise and across organizations, because at the end of the day, I think we're all recognizing that consumer habits are changing and shifting. Right. The way that individuals are looking to, invest their dollars and their brand loyalty, they're not just looking at sort of the lowest price. They're looking at, does this company have a heartbeat? You know, what does it stand for? What are its values? How is it engaging in my community? So I think as we're recognizing that consumer behavior is changing, and we as a society have sort of a heightened ability to sort of navigate and identify companies where we want to spend our dollars and we want to associate with, you know, it becomes crystal clear to companies, you know, that how they are weaving the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work is going to be critical to their growth and their sustainability.
Is checking for that heartbeat. I think that's a golden nugget in this conversation. Companies are not robots. They must have a heartbeat that shows they care, that shows that they're invested in that particular employee and that particular community. Adriana, I would love to close our relationship with your favorite quote. You know, I asked all our guests to share their favorite quotes. And I'm telling you, I grew up listening the same quote. So why don't you share with us your favorite one?
Okay, so my favorite quote, and it's a quote that I've been hearing ever since I was a little girl, and I owe it all to my amazing mother, is "No te ahogues en un vaso de agua." Okay, and literal translation means don't allow yourself to drown in a glass of water, which also represents don't sweat the small stuff. Okay. And that's sort of a motto that I have lived by my entire life, because I've learned to fail forward many, many times. I've learned to see the world for what it is and not get stuck and paralyzed. And so those words have resonated with me throughout my years. So folks, no te ahogues en un vaso de agua.
I absolutely love that, Adriana. And with that, we close up these episodes with no te ahogues en un vaso de agua. Don't sweat the small stuff. Adriana, we are so grateful for your wisdom and for your insights. Most importantly, for the great human you are, the flavor you bring to the industry, and above all, the value that you are giving to our community. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today. I so appreciate it.
This was Authentic Relationships, the new currency on your favorite podcast, The Inclusive Heroes. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.